Welcome to the Baseball Insiders. Thank you for joining us. I am Adam Weinrib, joined as always by Fansiders MLB insider Robert Murray. The Roki Sasaki deadline may be in a couple of days, the opening of his official signing period, but we're certainly getting teams eliminated ahead of schedule. Are we on the edge of our seats waiting for a deal announcement, or just the normal part of our seats watching teams get executed one by one? I'm not sure, but we'll talk about what we know for now. Plus, an interesting weekend at Fenway Park. Alex Bregman, Nolan Arenado's names floated by a bunch of different Red Sox, sometimes not by name, but mentioned in context of their potential roles. We'll try to clear that up. The Jeff Hoffman nonsense. What happened there? How did the Blue Jays get their hands on him? Why did a deal fall through with the Orioles? Also a rumored deal with the Braves. We'll break it all down and answer some of your questions. Sorry to disappoint anyone who was coming to the show specifically to see my hat game. No hat today, but guess what? There will be hats in the future, and I think that's just as good, quite frankly. Robert, thank you for joining me. Go Birds. We are both dressed in not quite Kelly Green, not quite Eagles colors, but 22-10. I don't know that the final score. I don't know if I was impressed, but win's a win.
Yeah, a win is a win. The Birds won, beat the Packers, so that was always good. I feel bad for everyone back at home. Was a Packer fan, but it is a good day to be a Philadelphia Eagles fan. There's a lot to talk about in baseball today. Roki Sasaki, the suitors are dropping like flies. We don't have a destination for him quite yet, but I mean, the end is near. Feels pretty good because it seems like that's all we've been talking about for quite a while. But I'm ready to break it all down. And then some more stuff as well. I got Cooper sleeping behind me here, so maybe he makes an appearance at some point. Drew, you will probably not see me in that hat. So, but yeah, no, how you doing, Adam?
I'm doing good. I'm hatless for now, but again, that could always change. The baseball landscape is always shifting, an ever-altering marketplace. Thank you for joining us. 3 o'clock Eastern today, 1 o'clock on Wednesday, 3:30 on Friday. And I know if you're thinking, hey, that's confusing, that's strange, you guys are messing with the timing. No better way to be informed about the timing than by subscribing to the channel, turning on your notification bell, seeing what's going on. That's the best way to stay informed on what's going on with the Baseball Insiders, or joining us in our Discord. You could join us at the Rumor Mill tier or the All-Star tier. All-Star gets a private Q&A with Robert, gets priority responses in this chat. You can ask your questions. We're going to go over plenty of your questions at the end of the show, but we've got some All-Star questions to handle first. And if you're an All-Star, we see you in the chat. You get priority here. Shout out to you. Shout out to our All-Stars. Good community. And subscribe to the Moonshot. That's our weekly baseball email newsletter where the fan-sided MLB team, including the one and only Robert Murray, will break down all the biggest stories in the big leagues with humor, insight, and behind-the-scenes info. So get on that list as well. But there is really no more time to waste here. I don't think any time is time wasted. I love reading promos, but we've got a ton of players in their landing spots to talk about, and your questions to get to, and not enough time to do it. Roki Sasaki, the name on everyone's lips. We were going to do a little Roki bit today because news came out that the Blue Jays had a meeting with him, maybe a secret meeting, maybe a dark horse candidate. Maybe they were the mystery team we were trying to get a handle on about a week ago. But man, right in the wake of the news that he had a meeting in Toronto and maybe flew from Toronto to San Diego, that's a team that we know is in the running for Sasaki, if not a favorite or a finalist. Teams started getting axed one by one. They got, just summarily executed. Like the traders came and got him. Yankees out. Mets out. San Francisco Giants, who I'm not even sure if I knew they were in to this point, also out. So what do you make of all this? I guess the two-part question is, when do we feel like we might actually get a decision here? And is the Blue Jays' interest, I mean, a meeting and a workout and everything that they had with Sasaki, that seems serious. That does not seem like cursory. That does not seem like mystery team status. And like you noted in the Discord, there's no real reason to create leverage here. Like, it's international free agent pool money. No, you're not weighing offers against one another. People are going to max out their offers, and then he's going to pick a destination. So how real is all this Blue Jay smoke, and when do you expect us to get he's choosing X instead of he kicked the Yankees in the groin?
It'll be soon. I don't have an exact day, but I'm expecting, like as I said, this start the show here, the end is near. And he's not doing this just because it's for leverage purposes. He's not doing it to try to get the most money. I mean, money's a good thing, obviously, but if he was really serious about trying to maximize his value, he would wait until he could become like a major league free agent, and then he would really cash in. We would be talking about him getting a contract around Yamamoto's deal, in my opinion. Like, he's that talented, he's that good, and he's deserving of that kind of contract. And that's what's kind of drawn this level of interest around the league for him, and rightfully so. I mean, you're able to get a dominant, really good pitcher on a minor league deal, and that's why we've had all these teams involved. I still think at the end of the day, it's probably going to come down to the Padres and Dodgers, but the fact that he had that meeting with the Blue Jays was there, and Shai Davidi, I believe it was, or Ben Nicholson Smith, one of those two guys in Toronto, had a very detailed report on his visit in Toronto. And I would highly recommend going and reading that. But the fact that he had that visit with Toronto would indicate that they are seriously being considered here. I don't know if that's going to end up leading to a deal, but it shows that the interest is mutual on both sides. That's what I took away from that. But it's, in my opinion, at the end of the day, it's going to be hard for him to, or it's going to be hard for the Blue Jays to convince Sasaki to go away from the Dodgers or the Padres, if that's indeed what it comes down to.
Yeah, I think everyone who heard early in the process his agent say he loves a pitching lab, he loves development, he wants to get out of the spotlight a little bit. I don't think any of that dissuaded us from thinking, okay, but all the, these California teams that we've long associated with Sasaki are still more than likely the landing spots. We've heard about them for a reason, and I think we're about to find out in the next couple of days whether the Dodgers were the most obvious favorite of all time. Like, oh yeah, duh. I mean, of course, but all of that heritage and all of that talent. Of course he chose the Dodgers. Or if they were the most obvious smokescreen of all time for a Padres team that employs Yu Darvish, that has always been considered at the forefront of these conversations as well. So it's going to be one of the two, I still believe. But we will learn more in the coming days. We're starting to get these no's. And when the no's come, the news is soon to follow. Sorry to the San Francisco Giants, who will not be signing Roki Sasaki. Sorry to the Yankees as well. Yankee fans, I don't know if you're heartbroken over this one. Personally, it's not exactly peeing in my cornflakes. I did not expect Roki Sasaki to be a Yankee, but he ain't got to be. And so, yeah, if you weren't moved on already, you got to move on now. I want to get your perspective on the Jeff Hoffman stuff before we move on to a couple of rumors and answer questions. And yes, doesn't he have a deadline? January 15th to 23rd. We will get Sasaki news in that window, but I guess the question is if it leaks out sooner than that now that we're getting all these no votes. But stay tuned. It's either this week or next for sure. But Jeff Hoffman, Friday night to the Jays becomes official. And people wonder all offseason, is he a starter? Is he going to stay a reliever? What are we doing? It ends up being 3 years, $30 million to the Toronto Blue Jays. And finally, somebody grabs Toronto's money. Good fit, 2024 All-Star, robust market. But then a whole bunch of stuff starts coming out that you were first on, noting that the Orioles and Hoffman had a more lucrative deal that was scuttled due to medical concerns. Came out today that the Braves also did at one point. The concern is in the shoulder. So I'm going to toss it over to you to give us more clarity on what exactly happened there and what the Blue Jays, like, is it that they don't, I mean, it's obviously not that they don't see what the other team saw. So is it just that they're willing to overlook it, or how did we get here?
Yeah, I'm going to take you guys in a detailed look into how this all played out on my end, because I had found out days earlier that Jeff Hoffman had an agreement in place with the Baltimore Orioles, and I had it on very good authority. But for me, I always want to have two sources on a story, and I could not get a second source on this story. It was exhausting trying to reach out to all these people and getting nobody to comment. Like, nobody involved whatsoever would give me a response. Nothing. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, okay, that's odd. I wonder, maybe is it bad info? Like, what exactly is going on here? And all of a sudden, my original source texts me and is like, he failed the physical. And I think failed is a little strong. The Orioles, they flagged it. It was a right shoulder issue. There was concerns there. I don't exactly know what the issue was, but they flagged it. And they continued to try to negotiate a deal, to try to get a deal done to keep him in Baltimore. And all the while here, there were still other teams that were aggressively involved. And it was not just the Blue Jays. There was other teams that were trying to get him. But ultimately, he ended up going over to Toronto, flew the next day to go to Toronto to take the physical, passed the physical there. So clearly their concerns in Toronto were not the same as Baltimore. And then it came out earlier today about Atlanta having a deal in place with Hoffman. I believe that is accurate. Mark Bowman, who reported that, is always very good. He's on top of things there in Atlanta. That's all I can say as of this point. But there was plenty of interest in Hoffman. He did indeed have his physical flagged twice, and that is how exactly he's now in Toronto.
And I appreciate, as always, you holding and not running too early. But we had a big flurry here. The Baseball Insiders trying to prepare all that stuff, and I'm glad that the Hoffman Toronto news dropped when it did. Now we just get to react to it. There was a ton going on, and glad to get it all settled. So hopefully everybody watching learned a little bit more, got some more clarity for that situation.
Yeah, and another thing too is on this is I'm glad I didn't end up reporting it, because if I ended up reporting it and then it came out before he agreed to the deal with Toronto, that he had that would have cost him millions upon millions of dollars. And that's why there's a lot of people in baseball who prefer deals do not leak until the physical is passed. I know at times for me it can be frustrating, but it's a responsible thing to do. And yeah, it's just it was a lot. I learned a lot in that process. I think it helped me grow as a reporter. But yeah, no, it was one of the more unique 72-hour experiences that I've had in this job. And I think, Adam, I mean, I gave you a peek into what I was experiencing. Yeah, you could probably confirm that as well.
Yeah. I mean, it was nice to be a viewer with no pressure on, but obviously I do not envy your position there.
No, it was a lot, but hey, I mean, I'm lucky to be in this job, so I'm honored. Yeah, it feels good.
Yeah, it's fun also and absurd, and we thank everyone for taking this journey with us as we just try. We're carving through the off season as best we can, and I mean, in terms of being inscrutable, it was hard to be tougher to understand than all of the threads that intersected with one another at Fenway Fest over the weekend in Boston. And I know we got a lot of Red Sox fans in the comments here too, wondering about Bregman, and we know that there was a time when the fit felt natural, when they hadn't even made an official offer, and was this a fan-driven connection? Is the team interested in Bregman? Is there still a rift on Bregman? Over the weekend, it just got more confusing. Alex Cora spoke, sort of asserted that Devers is a third baseman, said he'd always told Bregman that he'd be a Gold Glover at second, and that wherever he plays, we'll see where he ends up playing, with us or with somebody else. Then Trevor Story saying that if a Hall of Famer like Nolan Arenado wants you should probably want him too. And then Chris Cotillo even noted that the Red Sox were telling mid-tier free agents that they're working on higher dollar moves first, rather than the other way around. In previous years, we sort of, they were like haggling over the final pennies of all their mid-tier deals. And then this offseason, they're sort of saying, hold tight, we got some big stuff we've got in the works. What is that big stuff? All Red Sox fans want to know. Is it Bregman? Is it Story? Is it someone, or Arenado? Is it someone we're not even considering? Is it Tanner Scott? Like, how big is big? So curious here what you're hearing after a long weekend of a bunch of people talking out of different sides of their mouth and ultimately planting seeds in the rumor mill of, surrounding like 5 different targets.
No, and I saw Cotillo's tweet at the time, and my initial thoughts went to either Tanner Scott or Alex Bregman. And Scott, I've heard the Red Sox link there for the majority of the offseason, and they are one of many big market teams that have been involved there. But the Red Sox are also casting a pretty wide net when it comes to the bullpen search. So it's not just Scott, but we've even seen reports saying that Scott could get $20 million a year, which that is a lot of money for a reliever, and that would qualify as a big dollar move. So I think that would fit that category for sure. But if he does get $20 million a year, I don't know if I could see the Red Sox being the ones to do that deal. We'll see. But I feel pretty confident that the Red Sox will leave this offseason with at least one other reliever not on the roster. But as far as the other fit goes, I think Bregman is the one that makes the most sense if we're talking big dollar moves. He can fill a bunch of different infield spots. He could be third base, but I mean, Rafael Devers has made it pretty clear that he does not want to move off of third base. They have Tristan Casas at first base. I mean, I'm on the record about what I would do with that one.
Yeah.
I would not move Tristan Casas. Maybe you can put him at another spot in the infield, maybe second base. I mean, I think he can end up being effective in a lot of different areas in the infield. So I don't know if he'd be willing to move to second. That's just my own speculation there. But to me, if we're talking big dollar moves for the Red Sox, those two to me stand out the most. And then if they're not able to land those, then I think they circle back to those mid-tier options, try to get something done there, and then move on.
And the Arenado thing keeps evolving. At one point, we had the Red Sox as the last gasp, final destination for Arenado. Not final destination in a he's going to die getting hit by a log falling off a truck kind of way, but in a last possible trade destination for the offseason. Then we heard it opening up a little bit. We heard the Mariners, we heard the Tigers involved on Arenado. So I assume sort of same as it was when we checked in last week, like no longer Red Sox or bust. We're opening this up. We may be reaching the end game on Arenado a little bit, but that you wouldn't be stunned if he stayed in St. Louis after all this.
No, I wouldn't be stunned by it at all. And I still don't understand. I don't like the fit for Arenado in Boston. I don't.
And talk to Trevor Story, because apparently he doesn't get it.
No, and it's like, I don't know. To me, you have Devers at third, you have Casas at first base. You don't, unless the opportunity is too good to be true, you don't mess with that. I think if you're the Red Sox, you do not look in Arenado's direction. I think if you explore options, you look elsewhere. And we've even seen Katie Wu of the Athletics say that it's Red Sox or bust after what was it, the most recent development there for Arenado. If I was a Red Sox, I wouldn't do it. And if the Red Sox don't do it, then I don't know if there's another team that goes out and does it. In my opinion, we could end up waiting until spring training for an injury to happen, or some team to become desperate to go and trade for Arenado. But he's also got the no trade clause. We've already seen it impact the deal to the Astros, so that complicates things as well. Yeah, it was always going to be a very limited market for Arenado, especially with this no trade clause and his big salary. And now, if it's Red Sox or bust, the options are pretty limited.
Yeah, and the comment right here from Chris asking, does defense not matter? In this particular instance, I think third base defense with a declining bat matters less than pissing off Rafael Devers.
Yeah, exactly. And plus, too, if you're adding a guy who is a good defender but also a declining offensive player for that big of a salary, I would use that salary flexibility or that payroll flexibility to go add somebody else and have a more significant roster upgrade. If this was Arenado of 3 to 4 years ago, this is a completely different story. I'm telling you, go out and get him, do whatever it takes, but he's not the same player that he was back then.
Yeah, and maybe Devers will eventually be a DH, but feels a little early to make that determination. And you've got some other pieces to play around with on that flexible roster in Boston. So we'll keep all Sox fans posted. But I guess, yeah, expect moves, expect bullpen moves. This is not over. And speaking of extremely not over, the free agents who've banded together to be open to the short-term high AAV offers that dominated the Scott Boras clan last offseason reportedly include Anthony Santander, who someone in the comments just asked about, Jack Flaherty, and Pete Alonso. There was speculation last week that Alonso's camp was going back to the Mets with an offer just for them, written in invisible ink that only they could see, 3 years, $30 million or whatnot. I did see a good theory, too, that maybe you push that to 31.1, you beat the Miguel Cabrera average annual value, and you call it a day on a short term with Pete. But, yeah, Pete and the Mets still feels like the most realistic option at this point for me. But definitely starting to eye short term on Alonso, on Santander, on Flaherty. I wonder if you're able to corroborate that and you're hearing about potential. I guess I wonder if other teams could jump in if these deals get shorter. But that said, I'm not sure which teams were really involved at the longer, contract term length. So not sure how that changes.
Yeah, I think teams would be more open to adding a guy on a short-term deal, because short-term deals, you can get out of them quick if it doesn't work out after 1 year. Then you can move on and call it a day. In a case like Alonso, we're probably looking at a 3-year deal with a high AAV with an opt-out after year 1. And I think you're spot on. I think that the Mets make the most sense there. To me, they make the most sense for him. He makes the most sense for them. I think it just makes sense for all parties involved. And I think eventually it's going to get done. I think it's clear that there's still mutual interest between the two sides. And even after all this time of not agreeing to a deal, they've remained engaged throughout this entire process. As far as Santander and Flaherty go, I think the short contract would make a lot of sense for them. As far as Santander goes, obviously, he's a tremendous power bat, but he's kind of a limited player. He's got some flaws, a strikeout rate especially, and I think that could give some teams some pause here. As far as Flaherty goes, tremendously talented pitcher. In St. Louis, he was very highly regarded, and Obviously, he had his struggles there. He ended up going to Detroit, pitched really well, went to Baltimore, really struggled there. And this year, especially with LA, really put things together. And I'm surprised he's not getting the kind of contract that he wanted. I'm not exactly sure what's giving teams pause there. Maybe I don't know exactly what he's seeking, but if he's looking for a 5-year deal, just putting that out there as my own speculation, I could see maybe that giving teams some pause, and they're trying to go a little bit shorter term there. But to me, if you're limiting them, if you're going short-term AAVs for all of these guys, that's going to end up getting more suitors involved. You can end up trying to maximize $1 on a short-term deal. I think it's a good move by their agents. And we'll see exactly how long they linger. And yeah, I don't know. I'm curious which one goes off the board first. What do you think, Adam?
I think good shout by Trevor D, and good shout by me mimicking you saying good shout, saying that Flaherty maybe to the Roki Sasaki runner-ups. I like that too, as long as the Roki Sasaki runner-up is not San Diego. Because if San Diego misses out on Sasaki at that price, I doubt they would have the money to pivot or the desire to pivot to Flaherty, a guy who just won the World Series with the Dodgers. So I feel like if the Padres get Sasaki, I'm interested in a Dodgers Flaherty reunion, maybe a Tanner Scott for LA. But if the Dodgers get Sasaki and the Padres finish second, I kind of don't see them engaging on Flaherty. I don't know if you agree.
No, I agree with that. The Padres all offseason, they've just been limiting, or they've been operating with very limited money. And it's been a really difficult offseason, I think, for Preller and that front office to try to get the players that they want, just because they don't have the financial means that they did in previous off seasons. And yeah, I mean, that's why, unless they end up trading one of their players off the major league roster, and I'll get into that in a second here. But unless they're able to trade one of those guys off the major league roster, then I don't know if they're really going to be able to go out and do that. But that being said, you look at it from that roster overall. You have Cronenworth, you have Suarez, you have, I mean, a bunch of different guys. Xander Bogaerts has been mentioned in rumors, and a lot of these big contract guys. If you're able to move on from one of them, then you can end up getting some serious, or some like potential serious flexibility. Like I've seen the rumors about Suarez. I think the Padres have to listen on all of these guys because they just have very limited funds available. That's just the reality of it at this point. I don't think the Padres would, in an ideal world, would want to trade him. But that being said, like if they want to go out and sign an impact bat, or if they want to go out and sign an impact pitcher or two, maybe they have to move on from Suarez or one of these guys. It's just a reality, and they have to consider any and all options at this point.
Arise, Suarez, Cease, we definitely have our eyes on that, but more likely, yes, than popping on and snagging Flaherty. Appreciate everyone's.
Yeah. And also, too, sorry, I just cut you off there. I'm glad you mentioned Cease. Like, if the Padres move on from one of these guys, it's not going to just be a salary dump. They want to get value in return, because they're not just going to trade a guy just to trade a guy. Like, that's not what Preller does. He's going to want value in return, especially if you're moving on from a guy as good as Cease or Suarez or anyone like that.
I hate trading a guy just to trade a guy. Deeply unpleasant, and I think most teams would agree. Well, thank you for all that insight, and we hope everyone in the chat. We see your questions. We're going to get to a couple before we sign off. Sorry for an early show today and a little bit of an early sign off. Blame me. You can blame me. But we have a super chat in here about the Angels, and it does feel like a good time to mention that because Santander was pretty heavily connected to them. Maybe it's been about 2 weeks now. But it did feel like, hey, maybe that's, the final piece of their offseason puzzle after nabbing Kikuchi and after making a lot of early noise. There was like a 10-day period when the Angels were the only team signing any major league free agents. And since then, they've gone pretty dormant. But yeah, curious. I don't know if the short-term AAV thing helps them at all with Santander. Curious if you have an update on where the Angels are looking.
Yeah, as far as the Angels go, they are keeping all of their options open. I think if we're talking about pitching, I would imagine they look at, if they're going for a bigger name guy, I think Jack Flaherty makes the most sense for them. He's got the California connection. They've always needed starting pitching, it seems like. And Flaherty would be a really strong fit there, even on a short-term deal or even on a long-term deal. I would imagine if it's with the Angels, it'll probably be a shorter-term deal. As far as the offense goes, the bats that I'm looking at for them are like Anthony Santander, Jurickson Profar, guys like that. I don't think I'm still skeptical about Pete Alonso there with the Angels. I don't know if that's necessarily the move that makes the most sense for them. Although Artie Moreno is known for doing things that don't make sense, so you can never rule anything out there. But those are the two bats that I think make the most sense there with the Angels.
And we had a couple of questions about Jurickson and Profar. We had a question from, Paul asked for any news on Profar. We had a Braves person popping in and saying, he's, the Curacao native. It feels like maybe in the Braves lineage it fits. Yeah, Ozzy Albies from Curacao and Andrew Jones as well, right? I believe Mark Scheimer popping in with that. But anything on Profar, who was one of the most underrated and narrative dominant players of last season and has kind of disappeared in the background this offseason?
Yeah, no, you're spot on with that. He's a very underrated player, underappreciated, and he's thrived in San Diego. And last year he had a few offers to leave San Diego, but he took less money to stay in San Diego. And this offseason, I think we're going to be in a spot where the Padres are going to be not going to be in a position to offer Profar exactly what he wants, and they're going to be a decent amount behind unless they trade a player. So my guess as of this point is that Profar is playing elsewhere in 2025. He has got a pretty strong interest overall around the league. I know of there's a bunch of teams that are involved, and I mean, big market teams. That's what I can say, at least as of this point. But I expect him to get a pretty lucrative multi-year deal.
I would hope so. Although the destination, that's one that I can't pin down. So stay tuned. Hopefully that market narrows soon.
And I'll also tell you that guy, I do not think Profar is going to the Pirates unless this price drops to a very lower than it is now. I do not anticipate him going to the Pirates.
I'm going to actually go on a limb and say I anticipate him going to the Pirates. You can lock that in.
Wow.
We appreciate the questions as always, and we will be back on Wednesday afternoon, 1:00 Eastern, answering more of them. So get him into the All-Star channel, get him into the chat when the show opens, and hopefully we'll be able to address every big name that comes up. Andrew asked for my Starbucks order. It's simple. It's a grande cold brew with hazelnut and skim milk. Not to disappoint. I'm a simple man. Yes, it's a bougie establishment, but I'm going bare bones there. But what are your Starbucks orders? Weigh in the Discord. Weigh in the comment section next time. We'll get it going. Robert, thanks so much for joining me today, answering these absurd, trying to make sense of the absolute nonsense that took place over the weekend at Fenway Fest, and also the Roki Sasaki market, which we're getting 30% of the news on and still waiting on the biggest, thread. We know it's not going to be, still waiting on the big conclusion there. So thanks for helping us sort this out.
No, for sure. I'm happy to do it. I appreciate everyone who tuned in. I got to go make a phone call. Phones do not stop. I've been on the phone a lot today, kind of mentally fried. So hopefully that didn't come through on the podcast by any means. No. But one thing I can report is that I'm going to the football game tonight, Rams versus the Vikings. So they're playing the Eagles. So I'll be doing some scouting for the Eagles. I'm not actually scouting for the Eagles. I should say that, but go Birds, baby. Appreciate everyone tuning in. Everyone in the comments, we appreciate you. Adam, I appreciate you. Joanne, our lovely producer, we appreciate you. We'll see everyone back here on Wednesday.
Appreciate you. You'll be able to see up close and personal what it looks like when Sam Darnold gets pressured off the spot. I think Jared Verse probably going to flush that guy. 20 to 10 Rams. Smash cut to that being completely wrong, but we'll see. That's my take.
Wow, that's bold. I hope you're right, because I think the Eagles beat the Rams. I don't know about the Vikings, but go Birds. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, I think so too. I will not say go Birds, but I will let you say it. We'll be back on the air 1:00 Eastern on Wednesday. We have a special guest on Wednesday's show as well. Eric Cole from the Fansided MLB team is going to be coming on talking prospects. We're going to have a guest spot. Hope everybody enjoys that. We're going to be answering your questions as always and going through the news and rumors. So until Wednesday's show, we'll see you right here, same channel. Turn those notifications on. Join us Wednesday and again Friday, and on your audio platforms, wherever you get podcasts. Baseball Insiders is there. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.